Chapter 3 has some sentences that, if taken out of context and translated with just a slight different change of words, really makes Lao Tzu sound a little scary. And so, people trying to destroy classical thinking in China would pull out a couple of phrases right here in chapter 3 and say, see, Lao Tzu's feudalistic thinking. Lao Tzu is trying to brainwash the people. Lao Tzu is doing evil things. Every chapter in the Tao Te Ching is in relation to all the chapters before it. Chapter 1, we have no way of knowing what it is, but we're going to explore it anyway. And there's something really kind of cool happening. Chapter 2, careful. If we all start saying the Tao is really beautiful, that's not so beautiful anymore. We need to make sure people think we're really silly that we all gathered here on a Friday. Right, this is what we're doing with our Friday. We're doing, really? And then it talks about how everything's relative, and then it talks about how the sage uses non-interference and all of these things going on. And then here we are in chapter 3. 不上显，市民不争. By not placing greater value on talented individuals, people are not driven to vie for recognition. I just want to take a quick sidetrack and point out how wordy English is compared to classical Chinese. 不上贤，市民不争. 7 words. And I tried to translate it as literally as possible without adding explanations. And I ended up, by not placing greater value on talented individuals, people are not driven to vie for recognition. I mean, I played with chopping that down into like, not valuing talent. People are not driven to battle. That's not what it says. By not placing greater value on the talented, exalting virtue, literally in Chinese, people are not driven to vie for recognition. 不贵难得之货，市民不为道. By not placing greater value in rarer objects, people are not driven to covet or to steal. 不见可欲，市民心不乱. By not seeing what might be desired, people's hearts are not driven to distraction by desire. 时以圣人之治. This is the sage's way of governing. 虚其心，实其腹. Emptying their hearts, filling their bellies. 弱其志，强其骨. Softening their wills and strengthening their bones. 常使民无知无欲. By allowing the people to be free of knowledge and desire. 使夫智者不敢为也. Forces those with knowledge to not dare interfere. 为无为，自无不知. By one's actions being non-interfering, there is no situation which is ungovernable. Here, we have to look at the context of who Lao Tzu was and the time period. A high official in the Warring States period, a time that spanned, depending on whom you ask, 300-400 years, that was constant warfare, strife, intrigue, kingdoms ganging up on other kingdoms, inciting wars between other kingdoms, so those two kingdoms would become weak, and then they could come in and beat both of those kingdoms, intermarrying, battles for pearls, the famous Yezhu, the famous Knight Pearl, the famous sword, seeking and fighting for the great beauty like Helen of Troy. I mean, what was going on in that time, and the strife, and the great heroes that we hear about from the time, these people. Lao Tzu, right? Lao Tzu only is drawn to our attention today because of the idiocy he was seeing in his time. And what makes Lao Tzu so great is that idiocy, which was just so dominant in terms of its violence and its effect on the people, and the starvation and the wars and the crops and the failures and the raping and the pillaging and everything going on, is something that echoes all the way through time. Basically, jealousy, desire, want for power, wanting what other people have, all of those things. And so this chapter is, hey, if you don't say, this person is very good, therefore he is given this much land, this many horses, this many slaves, this position is allowed to wear the royal color purple, and hat has 3 danglies. People below that aren't going to say, I want that. How do I get that? And if there's only one position, I can't get it by being equally talented. I have 2 choices. I can either figure out how to sabotage that one, poison them, make them fall out of favor, do something, so I'm picked for that position. Or I can get all the information of this kingdom and then ride my horse secretly over to that kingdom and say, ha, give me this position and reward me and I will teach you all the secrets of that country. Right? But it leads by saying, giving people exalted status and saying, this person is better than you. This person is going to have more than you. This person is superior to you. Drives people to want to have positions of authority, power, and need. And they're going to get it one way or another. By not placing greater value in rarer objects, this time period is full of stories of people gifting beautiful horses or women or jewels or jade, and people literally going to war over an object. Oil, another great example of a desired object that's leading to literally coveting or stealing. Basically, going into the Middle East and the United States, we're stealing oil. We're taking over that area that has it. These kind of things happening then, happening now, happening all the time. And it's the fact that we say, this is worth more than that, that people start to say, well, we want more of that than this. And if they can't get it by getting it themselves, they will steal it. They will fight for it. They will take it for it. And so Lao Tzu is saying, gosh, look at all this craziness going on. This person has become famous, and so everybody wants to be famous, and so they're sabotaging and poisoning each other to become emperor, to become this, to become that. Everybody's going to war over these objects, all of these things, their desirousness. And so he says, if people just don't see what is desirous, then people's hearts are not driven to distraction. And this is the sage's way of governing. And then here comes the controversial lines that I translated, emptying their hearts and filling their bellies, which many people will start to translate in ways that are saying, keep the people ignorant. If people are ignorant and they're just filled, fat, and happy and working, and they have no idea of what value or anything is, they're just basically the cows in the field, your feudal serfs are working, there's no problems. And then you point out this is the problem with Lao Tzu, etc., etc., etc. And that's not what Lao Tzu was talking about. Lao Tzu is a pretty smart guy, right? It's not like he's really, really smart, and then all of a sudden here's this really racist, whatever his type chapter, and then he goes back to being smart again, right? That's not what's happening here. But it's often misinterpreted, and if you read English translations, you can read some translations that definitely make you a little leery of what he's saying in there. And that's because it's out of historical context. And so what he's saying is that if we don't say, this person is worth more than you, that you should strive to have a better farm, a better this, then they're not going to have that in their thoughts all the time. They're going to focus on their lives. They're going to be given an opportunity just to live, to fill their bellies, not be marched off to war, not to be this, not to be that. And so this wonderful idea of, by allowing people to be free of knowledge and desire, which is kind of controversial if it can be mistranslated, but it's in relation then to the next line, which is so historically important for that time period. 是福智者不敢为也. This causes those with pouvoir, in French, the ability, the wisdom, the intelligence, the manipulative, the charisma, that they don't dare actually try and do something. Because the people are just living. You can't incite them to riot. You can't incite them to want more. You can't incite them to covet something in that kingdom, because they're basically just doing their lives, farming, raising their children, all of that. That if you start to go in there and say something, they're like, huh? What's going on? But if you constantly seed it with, our kingdom should have this. They have those grasslands and it used to belong to our ancestors and blah, 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 blah. And then I feed them this, and then bit by time, I excite them. Then I come in and say, they are stealing from us. That's why we have no water. Let's go. Right? I manipulated a people, a country. I went to war. And Lao Tzu is saying, if you can figure out how to keep people from coming across this brainwashing, from being fed by the tricky people who are trying to manipulate them, then the manipulators can't actually manipulate them because they're just living. They go, huh? And so Lao Tzu is saying, if you can figure out how to hollow their hearts, but fill their bellies, soften their wills, they don't have, I want this, I want that, I want to be driven to have more than my neighbor, I want this, I want that. You soften their will, and you strengthen their bones. Life is good. It's okay. I have my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. Life is continuous. Then those who are unscrupulous, those who want power, have little ability to manipulate a situation where they can suddenly take advantage of it. And thus, wei wu wei, by your actions being non-interference, there's nothing that can't be uncovered. Because everything can be reasoned with or dismantled. It doesn't spiral out of control so that when you step in, there's no way to stop it because it's going to have to go to its final extent before it coming back.